Pripyat, the Forgotten City 1. The birth of Pripyat, a model Soviet city visual newly built Soviet-style apartment buildings. Pripyat was established in 1970 as a model city of the Soviet Union designed to house the workers and engineers of the Chernobyl Nuclear Power Plant. It was a city of progress, a symbol of technological advancement and Soviet pride. The streets were lined with modern apartment buildings, schools, hospitals, and recreational centers. Unlike many Soviet cities, Pripyat had a vibrant energy, filled with young professionals and their families. It was a city built for the future, with a growing population and a promising economy. The skyline was adorned with concrete high-rises, boasting views of the nearby Dnieper River. At its peak, Pripyat had over 50,000 residents, all living in what was considered one of the most advanced cities in the region. The buildings were new, the infrastructure was strong, and the people believed they were part of something great. Little did they know, the city's fate was already sealed. 2. A thriving community before the disaster. Visual city center, market, and amusement park bustling with people. In the years leading up to the disaster, Pripyat was a city full of life. The streets were crowded with people going about their daily routines, children playing in parks, workers commuting to the power plant, and families shopping in modern supermarkets. The local marketplace was always bustling, filled with Soviet goods, fresh produce, and eager shoppers. Schools and cultural centers flourished, offering education and entertainment to the growing population. One of the city's most anticipated attractions was its amusement park, which was set to open on May 1st, 1986, just days after the explosion. The Ferris wheel, bumper cars, and other attractions stood ready, promising joy and excitement. It was meant to be a celebration of progress and Soviet achievement, but instead it became a frozen monument of a future that never came. 3. The night of the disaster, April 26, 1986. Visual Chernobyl power plant explosion, smoke rising in the distance. In the early hours of April 26, 1986, Reactor 4 of the Chernobyl Nuclear Power Plant exploded. The explosion was caused by a flawed safety test, which led to an uncontrollable surge of power. Within seconds, the reactor's core overheated, triggering a catastrophic steam explosion that blew the roof off the facility. Radioactive debris was scattered into the sky, contaminating everything in its path. The blast was so powerful that it was detected by radiation sensors thousands of miles away. But in Pripyat, life went on as usual. Unaware of the invisible danger, residents continued their routines, breathing in the deadly radioactive air. Firefighters rushed to the scene, battling flames without protective gear, unknowingly exposing themselves to lethal doses of radiation. The sky above the plant glowed with an eerie blue light as radioactive particles filled the air. The city, however, remained silent. No alarms, no warnings. The evacuation, a city left behind. Visual, residents evacuating, leaving their belongings behind. 36 hours after the explosion, the Soviet government ordered the evacuation of Pripyat. Buses filled the streets, and loudspeakers announced that the evacuation would be temporary, lasting only a few days. Families were told to bring only essentials, documents, food, and personal items, leaving behind their homes, pets, and possessions. People locked their doors, believing they would return soon, but those doors were never reopened. The evacuation was eerily orderly as authorities tried to maintain calm, but in reality, the city was already unlivable. Radiation levels had reached catastrophic levels, and every second spent in Pripyat was another step towards sickness and death. Children's toys were left scattered in playgrounds, dishes remained on dinner tables, and unfinished books lay open on nightstands. Within hours, Pripyat was empty, a ghost town frozen in time. The school left to decay, visual, abandoned school with books, gas masks, and empty desks. Among the many abandoned buildings, Pripyat schools remain some of the most haunting. Classrooms were left exactly as they were, with lessons still written on chalkboards and books left open on desks. Gas masks, once intended for safety drills, now litter the floors, a grim reminder of the city's tragic fate. In the kindergartens, tiny beds remain lined up, waiting for children who would never return. Dolls, teddy bears, and picture books remain frozen in place, covered in layers of dust. The silence inside these schools is deafening, as if the laughter of children had been replaced by the echoes of an abandoned world. The education system had once thrived in Pripyat, preparing young minds for a bright future, but now those futures had been stolen by an invisible enemy, radiation.
Hospital of Shadows, visual empty hospital beds, abandoned medical equipment, eerie atmosphere. Pripyat's hospital is one of the most contaminated places in the entire exclusion zone. It was here that the first victims of the explosion, the firefighters and plant workers, were rushed for treatment. They arrived with severe radiation burns, their skin peeling away as doctors tried desperately to save them. But the radiation was unforgiving. Many of the first responders died within weeks, their bodies so radioactive that they had to be buried in lead coffins. The hospital itself became a hazard, with clothing, equipment, and furniture absorbing deadly radiation. Even today, some rooms remain so dangerous that they are off limits, with radiation levels that could prove fatal within minutes. The hospital stands as a grim reminder of the disaster's immediate human cost. 7. The amusement park that never opened. Visual rusting Ferris wheel, overgrown bumper cars, eerie silence. One of the most iconic images of Pripyat is its amusement park, a place meant for joy, now a haunting symbol of loss. The Ferris wheel, which was supposed to bring laughter to children, now stands frozen in time, its rusting frame creaking in the wind. The bumper cars, once full of excitement, are now covered in rust and debris, surrounded by overgrown weeds. The park was set to open just days after the explosion, but it never did. Instead, it became a site of sorrow, visited only by the occasional wildlife and daring explorers. The silence is overwhelming, as if the city itself mourns the lives that were forced to leave behind their dreams. 8. Nature takes over. Pripyat today. Visual, overgrown streets, buildings swallowed by trees, eerie atmosphere. More than 3 decades after the disaster, Pripyat is no longer just a city of decay. It is a city being reclaimed by nature. Trees grow through windows, vines creep up apartment buildings, and entire streets have disappeared beneath layers of moss. Wild animals roam freely, from foxes to bears, thriving in a world without humans. Despite the radiation, life has found a way to flourish in this ghost city. The silence is broken only by the rustling of leaves and the distant cries of birds. Pripyat stands as a reminder of the power of both destruction and renewal, a monument to human tragedy, but also to nature's resilience. 9. A city frozen in time. Visual aerial view of Pripyat fully overtaken by nature, an apocalyptic scene. Today, Pripyat remains a place of mystery and fascination. Tourists, adventurers, and researchers visit, drawn by the eerie beauty of a city untouched by time. The streets, once filled with people, now echo only with the wind. The buildings stand as hollow shells, silent witnesses to a disaster that changed the world. And yet, even in this abandonment, there is something strangely beautiful. A city frozen in time, forever telling its story.